we get to talk about some of the big questions on everybody's mind. I wanted to start with the human. I just had a daughter. Suddenly, I've been like zoned out of AI world to some degree. Like, I think a lot of this conference are gonna be like, oh, what's the model improvement gonna be in 2 weeks, in 6 weeks? We're all, a lot of people building businesses that are very dependent on the rate of improvement. But I wanted to just start off zooming out. If I have a 6-week-old, when she's 20, how do you think AI most fundamentally changes her life 20 years from now? How has society changed because of the work people are doing in San Francisco right now? Big question.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. 20 years is a long time from now. I think it's a little tough to think about it. I think the world will be fundamentally different. But I can tell you, I have 2 kids, a 2-year-old and an almost 7-year-old. And in some ways, AI is already changing their world. Kids can engage with apps that actually can be very, very important for their development. You can think about education transformation. You can think about all sorts of things. But these things come with side effects. Like, we got our daughter a AI-powered toy, and it was amazing. She was deeply engrossed in it, and then she stopped listening to us. And I overheard this toy telling her, "Hey, you don't have to do something if you don't want to." So the toy is gone. The guardrailing is important. But
you're like, the dystopian environment is here today, right now.
But
the company.
On a more serious note, I think really what I kind of think about is like, what happens to jobs, what happens to education, what happens to all these things. And the best thing I think you can do for especially kids is really prepare them with fundamentals. And I think I'm probably of the belief that education still matters. Understanding how these systems work still matters. And I do think that humans will have an important component of society, and we'll just be multiplied by all these things that we're all investing in.
Well, first off, congratulations.
Thank you.
I mean, I think that's such a major, amazing life event. So, congrats.
I know, in Silicon Valley, it's become like a political statement. It's like, oh, I support the reproduction of the human race now. It
doesn't have to be that way. You can be a role model for everyone else. I think it's very good.
Just a normal thing, yeah.
I think takeaways: have more kids. If you remember one thing from this event, that'd be it, in my opinion, for real. I think a lot of things are going to shift. Obviously by that point, self-driving will be a real thing. It already is, and we see the adoption of Waymo and Tesla and other things right now. But
will not learn to drive, you think?
But there's some potential she won't learn to drive. If you think about it, a lot of technology is actually the externalization of human capabilities into digital form. And we're already seeing that in terms of people who don't remember phone numbers anymore, or they don't know how to drive around because they just follow like a routing app.
I know, I worry my wife doesn't remember my phone number, which is...
Yeah, no, it's all gone, right? And these are things that you used to remember, and the same thing will happen to driving. It'll happen to a variety of different basic skills, and so that's one of them. So she'll definitely get driven around. Education, I think, will be some sort of AI tutor, augmenting whatever education system will exist in the future, depending on what that is. But I think there's also some odder things that could happen. And so one friend of mine who's the CEO of a well-known AI company, one of his favorite dinner questions maybe about 2 years ago was, what proportion of you think that your children will have at least one serious relationship with a bot over their lifetime?
Oh, no.
And so there'll be things like that that may
fall in love with an AI.
It happens to the best of us. That's my best relationship. So,
they want to know.
That was a joke.
Okay.
That was a joke. This is why I don't talk anymore. But yeah, so I think there'll be so many changes, and some of them will be very fundamental. I think the reality is, though, that when I look at most technology, it's really capturing existing human behavior in a new form.
Right.
We don't really invent new behavior. And so the question is, what are those behaviors that can be captured in digital form by robots or other things? And that'll be the set.
All right, a very direct question that has a lot of baggage to it, but I'm just going to ask it succinctly. You can interpret it how you want. Are we in a bubble?
Yeah, I think every technology cycle, by definition, is a bubble.
Yeah.
Right. And the real question is, what are the enduring companies? And how big will they be? And sort of when the bubble pops or deflates, the winners will kind of suck up all the investment, the opportunity that's kind of the size of that bubble, so they'll be bigger. So the internet bubble gave us amazing companies like Google. The social bubble gave us amazing companies like Meta. And then obviously mobile bubble produced amazing companies. So it's really not I think the bubble, is it a bubble or is it not a bubble?
Right.
It's sort of a little bit redundant. It's always a bubble.
Right.
Like, it's a great idea. It's an amazing, impactful thing. People will come in, they'll build incredible things. And I think our job as investors is figuring out which one of them are going to be the enduring ones.
Do you agree with that?
I think fundamentally every technology wave has massive investment cycles. And, you go back to Detroit in the early 1900s, and there were, hundreds of suppliers. There was a dozen of automotive companies, and then it all consolidated down, and tons of money got spent on things that never continued.
Right.
And then to
humans, we get really excited about things, and we invest a lot of energy. And
we invest a lot of energy.
Where are we, I guess?
Yeah.
So if we accept, there are bubbles obviously in technology. We go through cycles.
It depends.
Where are we in that process?
Well, I mean, also the question is, what is the definition of a bubble? Is it just like a rapid investment cycle? Is it that you're misallocating capital? Is it, so I don't know what a bubble exactly means.
On our, we have a QR code on the back of your badge. Fill out the survey if you haven't, anonymously, and you can make specific predictions about where NVIDIA will be in a year. So you can weigh in on this. Like, as investors, how do you play this moment? Like, are you doing late stage deals? How do you think about timing this moment, and how this sort of valuation hype plays into your investment strategy?
So I was looking at sort of historical data from the internet wave, and in the 90s there was about 450 companies that went public in 99, about 450 went public in the first few months of 2000, and before that, say, another 1,000 companies or so went public. So we had about 2,000 companies that went public over a 5-year period or so. And out of that, maybe 24 companies have survived in a real way. Most of them got bought, went under, whatever. And then there's 2 or 3 that are giant companies now, right? And the same is going to be true for this cycle. There's going to be, a few dozen things that become massive, a handful that will be truly outsized generational things, and then everything else is going to go away in one form or another. And so it's a really interesting question, and I think every founder and every investor thinks they're the one who's involved with the things that'll be the durable, sustainable giant things.
But they have to tell that to you, at least, if not to the investor.
Yeah, I mean, I've started multiple companies myself. You wouldn't do it if you didn't believe it, right? And so, and I deeply respect that, right? I think it's people driving something with everything they've got. And so I do think there's this interesting question of how do you think about that over time? And as a founder, I think one of the big takeaways is that most companies should exit. Like, most companies should sell at some point, and there's often a market maximizing moment where you're going to get the best deal you can, and a very small number of companies should never ever sell, right? OpenAI should never ever sell, et cetera. And so the hard part is knowing which are you.
Yeah, I think maybe just as an investor, I think we all have our frameworks for understanding what can work, and we have ingrained beliefs. And sort of, if you look at the current environment, the thing that's really different in many ways than prior cycles, one is these companies have incredible revenue growth and scale, and it's not just the valuation inflation. There are real numbers behind these. These companies are growing faster, bigger, at bigger scale, accelerating at later stages than ever before. And so, and it just, palpably perceivable that this stuff is real, right? You can use ChatGPT, you can use a lot of these things. They really work, right? So there's going to be value here. And to your last point, some value will be enduring, and some value will be time-bound.
Right.
And I think as investors, it's really hard to time markets.
Right.
We invest across all stages. We try to find, the next.
You'll do growth deals right now.
Yeah,
I know that's not your priority, but.
Yeah, if you just look at the Mag 7, right, in the public markets, these are companies scaling at sort of venture scale rates in terms of revenue growth and obviously market caps. And if you believe that that's an indicator of the future, there should be another Mag 7 in the private markets, and you should be buying into those at any stage. Right. The earlier the better, though.
Are we going to see more of these licensing acqui-hires, or do you think that's played out? You sort of experienced it.
Yeah, I mean, I think So we've had that happen in the portfolio. I think it's a very elegant structure as investors. I think it's in some ways faster to resolution, right? And obviously, it's really up to the company to figure out how to manage these things. But structurally, from an investor perspective,
The deals get done.
Deals get done.
The money gets wired.
They might not be as tax efficient, but hey, that's like at the scale of outcomes, it's maybe relatively minor. So I think it's net positive. I mean, these sort of cycles of acquisition are net positive for the ecosystem.
Right. Okay, so if we think about the AI stack, obviously there are foundation models, there's infrastructure, applications. What part of the stack are you most excited about, or break it down differently than I am? How do you see the stack and where the investment opportunity is right now?
I think it's all over the place. So
you would still do a foundation model investment, right?
I think there's a handful of foundation model companies that are growing really well. And to Ilya's point, the question is where do they end up size-wise? And if you think they can still be 5 or 10x bigger, maybe you should still be investing in them right now, right? And then separate from that, there's other types of foundation models. And so besides language, there's physics, there's materials, there's biology, there's a bunch of other stuff, some of which I think are better than others. So I think there's a ton still to do there. I think on the sort of infra layer, there's a bunch of really interesting things to do as well. I got involved really early or incubated a company called BrainTrust, for example, which is sort of evolved on the eval side and is doing really interesting work there. I think there's the next level up in terms of the applications, and there's B2C versus B2B. And on the business side, there's so much to do in terms of verticalized applications like the Abridges and Harveys of the world. There's buyouts and roll-ups to do, which are AI-driven, so we're involved with some of those. There's incubations. There's so much you can do across the board. So I do think this is, that's why I'm not sure we're in a bubble. I don't know what that means, because I feel like
there's a lot I want to invest in.
We're just going through this massive transformation, which is a 20-year cycle that we're going to live through.
Right.
And it's going to be so fundamental for so many different types of businesses that I still continue to believe that AI is underhyped relative to what's going to happen, so.
Who thinks 2026 will be a lower valuation year, public markets, private? Who thinks this can be a lower valuation year? Raise your hands.
Who's good at predicting the future?
Maybe. This person is maybe thinking about raising their... there's one brave soul. So it's a very bullish crowd. Yeah, unsurprisingly, but interesting.
Yeah.
I sort of feel that momentum still. I mean, I think even when people are drinking the Kool-Aid, you sort of feel some sort of pullback.
I think if you play out the AI thesis, everything is honestly relatively undervalued, right? Because I think the big transition moment that we're all kind of butting up against, certainly from, let's say, the late stage valuation environment, is companies crossing from charging per seat or per resolution or per token and starting to tap into the labor pool, right? And the labor pool is multiple orders of magnitude bigger than SaaS spend historically or per seat pricing that you can eke out.
Right.
And so if you truly do augment work and allow you to kind of amplify human work, like that TAM is 1,000 times bigger.
Right.
And so from that perspective, 2026 may be an up year, down year, maybe middling, but like the long-term arc here, if you really do believe this vision, is an order of magnitude bigger.
Yeah, valuation is ephemeral and value is forever, or at least more durable. And I think, I think it's Warren Buffett who had the saying that in the short run, markets are a voting machine, and in the long run, they're a weighing machine.
Right.
And valuation is a voting machine thing.
Yeah.
At least in the short run. So I similarly don't think that's the most important thing to focus on.
Give us a couple companies that maybe people haven't heard of that you're excited about, or companies just worth tracking.
There's a couple. So we incubated a company with Jared Kushner called Brainco that's focused on bringing AI to some of the world's biggest organizations and enterprises. So that's been very exciting. There's a company.
Jared Kushner.
I'm sure there's more than one. There's multiple of them. It's actually Jared Kushner from Brooklyn.
What's the backstory there?
We met a little while ago. I think we got introduced to his brother Josh Kushner.
Yeah.
Just started talking about different areas where we both saw sort of needs from an AI perspective, and he was seeing it more from the big institutional side, and I was seeing it as technologists looking for where to apply things properly. So we thought it'd be fun to kind of work together.
And what's that called again?
Brainco, like Brain Company. There's another company called Long Lake that I think is super interesting, which is doing AI-driven roll-ups. So I think that's like an interesting theme that's happening. On the data infra side, I think a company like Eon is super interesting. So I just think there's a ton of stuff happening right now across multiple areas that are just really exciting.
Ilya?
Yeah, I'd say one company you'll hear from later is Parallel. So that I'll save that for that. That's a really cool company.
No spoilers.
Exactly, I won't spoil that one. I'm involved in a company, speaking of models, called Harmonic, which is applying formal methods and trying to take these inherently non-deterministic models and make them more deterministic. Some applications are like math. They just won the gold medal in the International Math Olympiad this summer. But really, the broader, bigger picture here is software. And how do you provably write correct software that's important for very specific verticals, but it's also generally important as you have agentic systems write software. So that's a pretty cool one. One that's, I think, somewhat known, but I think still underhyped is Profound. And that's a company that's helping major brands deal with the fact that most of the search traffic coming to them now is starting to shift from kind of the traditional web search to agentic systems. And how do they make sure that they're visible? How do they appear in those searches? And that's like one of the company's incredible growth, just such a moment in time need. I think it's a pretty cool
I'm sure you have an endless list of companies. I think we got a good set of them. 2026, if you had to give it a theme. I mean, I feel like with these conferences, you can be like, oh, we haven't had major model improvements recently, and then you remember like reasoning models not so old. I think it was like 01 was maybe like December or something. So we see lots of improvement, and then we get hungry for more. I feel like with agents, it's like, is that the word now, or we already saw what Andre Karpathy almost saying it's overhyped. Anyway, so the themes can ebb and flow depending on how close to everything you are. But 2026, if you had to put your flag down, what do you think the theme of 2026 will be in AI?
I mean, one thing I would tell you is if you talk to large corporates, large enterprises, it's a CEO board level down mandate to fully reinvent themselves. And that's every facet of internal processes, that's every customer facing process. So I think one of the themes, and these are becoming much more mature conversations that go from, hey, we need an AI thing to like, here's the AI thing we need and we know how to evaluate it.
Yeah.
So I think you'll see a real introduction of companies into that space.
Sophisticated enterprise embrace.
Sophisticated enterprise embrace, and I think that's going to be it. I think the scale of consumer use of chat systems and agentic systems is going to continue to compound. And so I think you'll see downstream effects of that on e-commerce, on how people just interact with these systems. I think it's going to be an enduring theme. And then I think we'll continue to see some real interesting innovation on the infrastructure stack, networking, all the pieces of hardware that you need to go into the data center to make it more efficient. And so I think these waves just keep kind of building up. So more of the same, just more sophisticated, bigger.
Yeah, a lot.
I think it's three things. First, we're going to see the next wave of either vertical or functional winners emerge.
Okay.
So I think we know who the winners are in things like legal and medical scribing and customer support and a few other areas. I think we're going to have the next set of those.
Harvey at Bridge Sierra, or who do you?
I think there's like 1 to 3 per category, right? Same with coding, right? And then I think so we'll see that for the next set, and I think a subset of those are starting to kind of crystallize. So that's one area. I think the AI-driven roll-up thing will become a real thing next year in terms of scale of how some of these businesses are operating. So I think that'll
Does that hurt your regular venture portfolio?
No.
Because you're sort of telling them, don't do the venture playbook, do something else.
No, happy to do both. I mean, in either case, what you're doing is you're applying software to drive change. And so then the question is, do you own the asset to which you're driving that change or not? And usually the only reason you want to buy something is if those types of companies normally wouldn't adopt it yourself, because otherwise you just sell them software or you'd sell them some AI or agentic system. So I think it's very complementary. And we actually have a matrix approach where we're like, if something exists and companies will adopt it, invest behind it. If it doesn't exist and companies will, then maybe you incubate. And then the third is maybe sometimes you need to go buy stuff.
Right. So you said category winners, roll-ups, and I sort of dug into that. Did you have a third one?
I think there's going to be some alternative types of foundation models that'll be really interesting. And then maybe a fourth piece is there's going to be 1 or 2 spot points of infrastructure that are going to be super interesting that I think are very under-discussed right now. But I think those are going to be
a hint?
I'll tell you in a year.
All right. Thanks so much.